Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture, we're going to talk big picture. We're going to talk about the life cycle of a business. Now, for any of you out there who want to become an entrepreneur, there's one thing you really need to understand. All businesses have 4 distinct phases. And once you get this, it'll help you understand how a business and your role in it is going to change over time.
So let's start right there. You want to be an entrepreneur. Awesome. But what does that phrase actually mean? There are a ton of myths out there, so before we get into the journey, we've got to separate the facts from the fiction. You know, a huge myth is that entrepreneurs are just born different, that you need some kind of genius gene, a boatload of cash, and a whole lot of luck. But the reality? It's not about that at all. The traits that actually predict success are things anyone can develop: perseverance, a killer work ethic, and just straight-up self-confidence. That stuff is way more valuable than a fancy degree, trust me.
And really, when you strip away all the hype, this is what it boils down to. An entrepreneur is someone who organizes and runs a business, and, here's the most important part, assumes the risk to hopefully make a profit. They're the ones willing to take that big, calculated leap of faith.
Now, you might think that leap is just total chaos, right? A completely random process. But what's so fascinating is that it's not. There's actually a structured path, a blueprint, that pretty much every single business follows, whether the founders know it or not.
And here it is. This is the blueprint. Every business goes through these 4 phases: pre-launch, startup, growth, and finally, maturity and decline. Understanding this is so critical because your role as the founder has to change and evolve right along with it.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Phase 1, pre-launch. This is the idea stage. It's the quiet before the storm, you know? Nothing's been built yet, no money has been made. This is the starting line. This whole phase is really a thought exercise. It's just you, or maybe you and a co-founder, spotting an opportunity in the market. You're doing tons of research, you're mapping out a plan of attack, and you're figuring out what resources you have. It's all mental, all planning, getting ready for what comes next.
And that brings us to phase 2, the startup. This is where you take all that thinking and you actually make it real. The planning part is over. Now, the hustle begins. So you're officially in business. You're getting your first customers, your first dollars. Maybe you're hiring your first few people. But it's a very small operation. Things are constantly changing, and you're definitely feeling some growing pains while you figure it all out. And this quote just nails it. This is exactly what a founder has to be at this stage. You have to be a chameleon. You're answering the phones, you're doing sales, you're handling customer service, you're doing literally anything and everything that's necessary just to survive and find your footing. Okay, so if you survive that startup grind, you get to phase 3, growth. This is the scaling stage. The business has found its groove, and now it starts to expand, and fast. This is the part of the story everybody loves, right? You see this clear, strong upward trend across the board. Revenue, employees, clients. The company might go from just a handful of people to hundreds, maybe even thousands, as you try to grab as much of the market as you possibly can. But here's the catch. With all this growth, your role has to change. You can't be the chameleon anymore. The entrepreneur has to evolve, usually into the CEO who orchestrates the whole thing from a high level. Or like Sergey Brin at Google, maybe they step back from the day-to-day to focus on special projects and innovation.
And that brings us to the final phase, phase 4, maturity. This is the legacy stage. This is when a business becomes an established, big-time player. Think about any huge household name company you know. They're probably right here. Yeah, these are the giants. Most of the Fortune 1000 companies fall into this mature stage. They're usually in multiple cities, multiple countries, and while they're still growing, that crazy rocket ship growth from the last phase has definitely started to slow down and level off. But being mature comes with its own big challenge. When a market gets super saturated, profits can start to dry up, and the company risks going into decline. So to avoid that, they have to innovate. They either have to pivot the whole business or expand into new areas to stay relevant.
So we've walked through the whole life of a business, but what about the founder's role at the very end of it all? Well, this leads to a really interesting, kind of counterintuitive idea called the founder's paradox.
Just look at this breakdown. The entrepreneur is everything in those first 2 stages. Absolutely crucial. They're still important during growth, but in that final mature stage, the founder often becomes, believe it or not, obsolete.
And here's why. A mature company runs on systems and processes. It's become a well-oiled machine that's designed to run efficiently. And that machine doesn't really need the chaotic, risk-taking energy that created it. This is why a lot of founders actually leave at this stage to go start the whole cycle over again with a new idea. And that leaves us with this one last really powerful thought. When you understand this life cycle, you realize the goal isn't just to start a business. It's to build something so successful that it can eventually thrive without you. So the real question for every single aspiring entrepreneur out there is this: what are you building for?